Welcome to The Red Story. Subscribe if you like it because I like it. You know, I have only seen or heard about cheating ex-wives who later tried to come back in the name of fixing things and in the name of love on TV. I had thought those who allowed their cheating ex-wives back into their lives were fools or knave, not knowing that one day I'd be facing the same thing those men are facing out there. Mine was worse because she tried coming back with a baby that was not mine. The audacity. Women can be manipulative. They use the fact that you love them even after the breakup and manipulate that to their favor. I still can't believe that I once found myself in the same situation. I almost got trapped with a child that was not mine. If I didn't get a wake-up call and took matters into my own hands, I would have been a father to another man's child. If there is someone who once found himself in the same situation as mine, how did you deal with this kind of betrayal? Let me tell you about my ordeal. So I, John 44, married this humble, down-to-earth, and loving woman. Her name was Emily 34. I loved her so much, there was nothing I didn't and wouldn't do for her, but she took all that for granted. Emily and I first met at a year-end party at work that was hosted by my boss 6 years ago. Her beauty caught my heart, her humbleness, and how she carried herself made me fall in love with her. When I first saw her, she was with some of my female colleagues. I didn't know how she knew my colleagues, but I later found out that she was the supervisor's little sister. I was working at an insurance company in Vancouver as a financial advisor. Let me first tell you a bit more about myself so it would be easy to understand my story. I was born and raised in a small town in British Columbia. I am the type of person people would call a farm boy in the city. I was raised in a big family by very strict parents when it came to our culture. My father used to say that if one of his children reached the age of 30 and had not found a wife to bear him grandchildren and grow our household, he would personally look or arrange a marriage for that son. So I was under a lot of pressure because I was the third born in my father's male children out of 5 boys and 4 girls. I don't know who came up with the rule that men in small towns must have many children or have 2 wives to grow the family's surname. My 2 older brothers were married locally. It was easy for them because they got married to their childhood sweethearts. And I, on the other hand, sighed. I didn't know if I was the problem or if I had a problem because I was not interested in courting women. The only thing I was obsessed with was my studies. So my brothers would sometimes tease me, saying I was too focused on books to notice any women. One day, my father called a family meeting. I thought it was something serious that concerned the family or his health. At the time, I was in the middle of my exams at the University of British Columbia, where I was taking a distance learning course in accounting and business management. It was a 3-year course, and I was in my 2nd year, heading into the 3rd. My father announced that he had found me a wife. He found me a wife while I was in the middle of my exams. That made me mad because it showed that my father didn't care about my goals and education. Instead, he wanted me to find a wife to give him grandchildren. I didn't argue with him after his announcement because I knew that if I did, I would be in trouble. You know how parents think they know what's best for everyone, and that's exactly what my father was doing. He also announced that I would have to meet the girl before he took the next step. I didn't agree because I was in the middle of my exams and didn't need any distractions, but he threatened to disown me if I went against his word. So I had no choice but to obey. He was the head of the family, after all. A few days later, my father brought this girl, the one he said he had found for me. He introduced her as Jessica, meaning industrious. The girl was beautiful, I won't lie, but she looked too young and too forward for me. I didn't want to disappoint my father, so I went with the flow. Jessica and I started talking, spending time together as my father had suggested. I told her that whatever was happening between us, she shouldn't be comfortable because I was doing this for my father. Me agreeing to the arrangement didn't mean I loved her or would ever love her. She wasn't the type of girl I would want in my life. Jessica was not the cup of tea I would choose if it were up to me. But we have to respect our elders' orders, right? We hung out a couple of times. She would sometimes see that I was not interested in whatever she was saying. She bored me to the core. We developed a pretend relationship because my father wanted grandchildren as soon as possible. Jessica and I slept together for obvious reasons. So during our planned relationship, she kept complaining that I was a boring boyfriend and too serious for her. How would you be a fun boyfriend to someone you didn't even love? Weeks after I had gone to the doctor, I heard rumors that Jessica was pregnant and people from the town believed that the child was mine because she had been seen with me a lot. I ignored all the rumors and my father took it upon himself to go and pay damages to Jessica's family since I had slept with her and supposedly made her pregnant. Months later, the child was born. Jessica had moved to our home because my father had paid the dowry for her. When the child turned 3 months old, he started getting sick. So in our culture, if a child gets sick randomly, it's believed to be related to ancestors. When the child is sick, an elder or the head of the family has to burn incense to appease the ancestors. My father tried burning incense several times, but it didn't work, which raised an eyebrow. After my father was about to give up, the incense finally burned, but not as it should have. The smoke was too small, and only a small portion of the incense was burning. The child kept getting sicker, so I suggested we go to a traditional healer. Jessica started throwing fits, saying she doesn't believe in traditional healers. Weeks passed, and a man named Adam came to our home, saying he was there to take his child. He narrated his story and told us that the child was his. I got confused because I had thought the child was mine. Adam told us that he knew the child was sick and needed his true family and to be united with his true ancestors. Jessica got furious and told him that she had kept the baby away from him because he was poor and couldn't take care of the child. I got really mad and told Jessica to leave because if I were to see her again, I might do something I'd regret. My father was shocked and disappointed because he had trusted Jessica. I couldn't believe that she had fooled my father to secure a better life. A few days later, my father, along with my uncles, went back to her home to demand the return of the dowry money. Since I was focused on my studies, I moved to the city to look for a job. After graduating, I found a job at an insurance company. A year later, I was given a permanent position, and I couldn't be happier. Time went by, and we were going to close for the festive season holidays. The CDO hosted an annual year-end party for the staff. The previous year, I didn't attend because I had gone home early for a family ceremony. This time, I attended and met Emily, who was introduced to me as my supervisor's sister. Emily was beautiful and humble. We started talking, and I found out she was smart and ambitious, which made me fall for her even more. We started spending more time together, going out and enjoying each other's company. Emily introduced me to different activities and places I had never experienced before. We became good friends and eventually started dating. Our relationship was blissful, and we supported and loved each other. After a few months of dating, I told my father that I had found a woman I saw a future with. Little did I know that I was just fooling myself. We eventually got married, and our wedding was a success. A few nights after our honeymoon, Emily wanted to talk about expanding our family and having kids. I had forgotten to tell her about my infertility problem, and I was too scared to share such a sensitive issue with her. I was afraid she would leave me if she knew. Weeks turned into months, and Emily became more persistent about wanting to have a family. One day, Emily came back from work and told me that she had removed her contraceptive implant. She wanted to get pregnant quickly and had been advised by her doctor to take supplements. I told her I wasn't ready for children, but I didn't explain why. A week later, she suggested resigning from her job to focus on building a family, but I refused because I couldn't afford to support her on my salary alone. Our relationship started to deteriorate. As time went on, the tension between Emily and me grew. She became increasingly frustrated with my reluctance to start a family, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes every time I avoided the topic. Our relationship, which had once been filled with love and joy, started to deteriorate. Emily began to withdraw from me, spending less time at home and more time at work. Or with her friends. She started going out frequently, often telling me she was visiting her parents or that work required her to travel. My suspicions began to grow as Emily's behavior became more distant and erratic. She was no longer the loving and affectionate woman I had fallen in love with. Instead, she seemed cold and detached, almost as if she was living a separate life. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I started to wonder if she was seeing someone else, but I pushed those thoughts aside, not wanting to believe that the woman I loved could betray me. One weekend, I decided to surprise Emily by visiting her parents' house, thinking she might be there. When I arrived, her mother seemed surprised to see me and told me that Emily hadn't been around for a couple of months. My heart sank. The lies Emily had been telling me became all too clear. When she came home later that evening, I confronted her about her whereabouts. Instead of denying it, she admitted that she had been seeing someone else, a man who could give her what she wanted, a child. The words she spoke shattered me. She told me that I was no longer satisfying her needs and that she had found happiness elsewhere. The worst part was when she blamed me for our failed marriage, claiming that I was less of a man because I couldn't give her a child. In that moment, the truth I had been hiding from her. My infertility became a weapon she used against me, even though she didn't know the full story. Despite my efforts to save our marriage, Emily was adamant about getting a divorce. She told me that she had tolerated me for too long and that it was time for her to move on. I was devastated, but I knew there was nothing more I could do. We went through with the divorce, and she moved out of the house that my father had given us as a wedding gift. My family was disappointed, and I felt like a failure. A little over a year later, just as I was beginning to piece my life back together, Emily showed up at my doorstep. She was holding a baby in her arms and claimed that it was mine. She told me that she had gotten pregnant just before our separation, but I knew that wasn't possible. I had never told her about my infertility, but now I had to. I calmly told her that the child couldn't be mine and showed her the doctor's papers confirming my condition. Emily was in shock and refused to believe me at first, but the truth was undeniable. I called her parents and her brother, asking them to come and take her away. I told them everything, including my infertility, and asked them to keep her away from me. As they left with her, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. I had loved Emily deeply, but her betrayal had left scars that would never fully heal. Since then, I have vowed never to let myself be vulnerable to another woman again. The experience with Emily showed me that not all women are trustworthy, and that even those who seem perfect can turn out to be manipulative and deceitful. I know that not all women are like this, but the pain I endured has made it difficult for me to trust again. Now, as I reflect on everything that happened, I can't help but wonder if there was a better way to handle the situation. Should I have been more open about my infertility from the beginning? Could I have done something differently to save my marriage, or was it doomed from the start? I'm reaching out to you, hoping for some advice and guidance. How would you handle this situation? What should I have done differently?